All right, coach. It feels like I've been doing these office hours episodes, and it just hit me that at this point, like, it's just become the Pat Henner coaching tree, and we're hitting another branch now with you and taking up the reins at Georgetown. But I'm catching you a couple days before Big East championships. So, what's the overall feel on how the team has been looking so far this season?
Yeah, I feel really good. We still have hopefully a time or two to get at Big East, but yeah, I really can't honestly ask for much more of how well the season's gone. Penn Relays was fun. Guys have been running fast, so practice has been fun. Vibes have been good, so yeah, it's been a fun season.
Is that just like a palpable momentum that you feel kind of coming off of the success from the indoor championships, especially with like Abel's title and then how well he's been running so far this outdoor season?
Yeah, I think we were lucky that Virginia Beach was driving distance from DC, so a bunch of our team drove down and got to like watch him and Tinoda run in person, and I think that inspired a lot of the guys to like want to get to that level. Um, so yeah, I mean, it's been obviously like really like emotional weekend that weekend, and sometimes there's like a lull afterwards. So I'm proud of Abel that he kind of took a few days off, but has come out in that and been great this season because it can kind of be easy to have a little bit of a hangover once you reach like your ultimate goal. But yeah, we've kind of just like built on that since the indoor season.
What's that like for you as a coach? Because I feel like, I've gotten the vibe, and just even from discussions with like other coaches, that you're just the more, kind of stoic, kept to yourself like during these championships. But when something like that happens and Abel wins, the title, and it's this big moment for the program, like what's the emotional high feel like for you?
Yeah, it's crazy. I like on. I'm probably just as nervous as them on race day, but it's not going to be productive for me to uh, show them that I'm nervous. So I just try to be laid back, and part of that just like keeping to myself is just like I'm really nervous. I don't really feel like talking to anyone. So yeah, when you have those moments, they always know like if they get a hug afterwards, they probably ran really well, and I don't think Abel had um, ever seen me that emotional like that before. Um, but you put a lot of time into someone. I mean, he's a fifth year, known him for 6 years through the recruiting process. So you just, see this 6 year journey go on and so many highs and lows. And, to have that happen, like to just like, I'm not a super emotional guy, but then that I just kind of like lost it in that moment. So, but it was cool, and like I said, a lot of the team was there. It would have been different if it was in Albuquerque or something like that where no one could get there. But we're lucky that a bunch of our guys got to drive down and experience that as well.
Is this year, what, 7 or 8 for you now?
I lose track. That sounds right.
Yeah.
More than that. Uh,
At what point does a team start to feel like, okay, this is my team? Like you've been working with Abel for 6 years, but the recruiting process and all that kind of stuff. Like, does the team take on sort of like your fingerprints and identity after year 4 or 5, whatever it might be?
yeah, I think um, when I initially took over, I think it takes a little while to kind of find your own voice and find your own way of doing things. I literally was just copying what Coach Henner did. And we talked all the time, and he was like super helpful for me, kind of initially taking over. And obviously still do a lot of the same stuff, but I'm different. I have a different personality than him. He has a different personality to me. So yeah, I would say it took probably a couple years of like, guys that I recruited and I was the main one, talk to them in the recruiting process as well as like the one person coaching them. So yeah, it definitely took a little bit of time.
This is your alma mater. How different is the program from the days that you ran to what you've kind of created here now? And what are some of the elements that like you remember from your own days that you're like, all right, like I want that to be, a throughway through, how I run the program too.
It's really similar right now because when I was a freshman, we didn't have a track, and our track is under construction right now. So we're having to drive 20 minutes to a high school track. So that feels very similar to when I was a freshman. A lot of this stuff is pretty similar. I keep like a very similar structure, like even to the times we had practice at when I was in school, pretty much. So tweaked a couple things. It's funny. I have one of my best friends, Levi Miller, that ran at uh, Georgetown, was in DC and went for a run um, with the guys. He's still in good shape, and it was cool for them to get to meet him, but he finished. He was like, "They're exactly like we were in school. Like we talked about like a lot of the same stuff that we would have talked about." So um, yeah, honestly I don't think it's like we have a new athletic facility, so that feels a little bit different. But it's so funny, like so much of the stuff is the same. Like I had breakfast with some of the guys this morning after their morning run, and like the same guy that works at the cafeteria when I was in school is like still works there. So I don't know. I feel I think a lot of it feels pretty similar.
How strong is that part of, I guess, tradition at Georgetown? I mean, like, you meet any Georgetown track alum, and they're very vocal and proud to have been part of the program, and that's it's a big population of people to also kind of keep happy, in the sense of like you want the program to succeed and for that pride to continue. So, is there a balance there of just sort of, all right, like I'm trying to find success for these athletes and at the same time still satisfy, these alums who mean so much to the program as well?
Yeah, it's kind of constant pressure. Our alums care a lot and they expect us to be good. But like I like that. Obviously, I have like internal expectations, but knowing that like if we suck, people are going to be not going to be happy. But yeah, this year specifically, so this was the 100th year anniversary of Georgetown track, as well as the 50-year anniversary of us having a women's team. So we had a big event the week after NCAA indoor. So a bunch of people came back from DC for that. It was a lot for 3 days after being at the indoor meet. I would have maybe liked a little bit of a break, but super cool to see, how much they care and come back. And the coolest part really was the last day. They got to really interact with the team. It was kind of like a impromptu like career sessions. I could talk about what's next, but also just uh, getting to interact and looking back, like Steve Holman, who's one of the greatest runners in Georgetown history, was there, and it was obviously right after Abel won, and got to talk to Abel for a long time, and then obviously Abel literally just broke his school record. So yeah, we always have like Penn Relays is big for our alums. So the Friday night of Penn, we always have a little alumni event. So I was nervous about going out to that after we didn't do well in the DMR, but thankfully we won the SMR, so people were in good spirits there.
How often do you hear from Gags, like who's obviously like a massive legend in Georgetown history?
I hear from him. He like his texts are very funny.
They're the best.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I think he probably he coached Alton, our director, so I think Alton probably hears from him a little bit more. But I can tell the guys did something good if I get the Gags text.
Yeah. Then, there's that element of being a student of the sport that is important, I think, for certain athletes to be able to kind of know, history in a sense, yes, but then at the same time, like what's going on and what it takes to be successful at like the next level. When does that sort of start to get implemented into just sort of the athletes that you work with at Georgetown? Because some of them do come in, at a high level. You have Tinoda, who was probably one of the most recruited, hotly recruited athletes coming out of high school, just, scaring national records. And the kids nowadays, I feel like with social media and all that kind of stuff, like it's more present and in front of them. But then there is sort of like that element of, all right, teaching them this is why this was successful, or this is why this matters. And so how do you go about just sort of developing that side of a student athlete?
Yeah, I think it's important for me to teach them. Like, I don't really fully expect them to know the day they step on campus who John Gregoric was, or Steve Holman, or we've had so many great runners in the past. Just pulling two names out of there, but I think it is important to teach them about our history, and know that like when you line up and you have the Georgetown on your chest, it means a lot more than just you. There's been a lot of people that wore that. But yeah, as far as like learning about the sport, I think I've never had someone get really good that wasn't like very into the sport. And when we show up to practice on a Monday morning, they know all the results. They knew everything that went on. Some of the kids that kind of aren't paying attention to it, I don't really understand. I think it would be like being a college basketball player and you don't watch the NBA. Like that doesn't make any sense to me. So yeah, it's funny. Like Tinoda specifically, he knows every meet entry for every meet. Like he'll tell me like, oh, so and so's running this at this, and I'm like, how do you know all this? But Yeah, I mean, these guys, if you're really going to get great at the sport, you kind of have to be pretty obsessive about it. And you don't want to be overly obsessive, but at the same time, you need to be a student of the sport. So I just try to talk to them about it. We watch like race videos and stuff because I think it's important, especially if you get to like the regional meet or stuff like that, where there's no pacer, to know like kind of how someone runs races is valuable. So yeah, we're just, even when we were at Duke last week, or whenever that was, the saw you on TV for the Grand Slam thing. I texted
Oh.
the guys. I was like, "It's on Channel 7 on the TVs at this hotel." That's what the CW was at the AC Marriott in Durham. So yeah, I think that stuff's important.
The other side, so that's the way of like becoming a student of the sport for your success as an athlete, but then student of the sport in the sense when you're going the other way and you want to get into coaching. What were you like, I guess, in those years where you were thinking of exploring, the coaching side of things? Like, was that constantly asking, what the purpose of workouts were, and like, what am I going to get out of, doing 10 by K with whatever rest it might be? Like the the meaning behind certain workouts. Like, how did you sort of learn that side of things, and that's what you wanted to do?
Yeah, so I was super lucky on two fronts. One, uh, Coach Henner had an exercise science background. I think that's what his master's degree was in. So when I was coached by him, he always explained the work. Like, he would say what the workout was, and he would tell us why we were doing it. He felt that was really valuable, which I agree with. And if I knew the science as well as he did, I would do that a little more, but I just don't. But then, secondly, my work study job through my financial aid was actually with Coach Henner. So I was just in the office a lot. And to be honest, probably heard stuff I shouldn't have heard as an athlete. But I was up there, I can't remember what year it started. But yeah, and I was there specifically when my first 3 years of school, he was like in my position. He was the head cross country coach, but wasn't the director. And then he got elevated to director, and he needed more help because he had more responsibility. So I kind of took on like probably doing more stuff than I would have been doing, but he just needed my help, and I liked being up there. So that's kind of how I got into it. I went to Georgetown because it was a really good school and a great program, and I had zero idea what I wanted to do. And I got really lucky that got to work for him. And then that year when Henry got elevated to director, Milt came in. So I get to learn from like these two guys. Like, looking back, I mean, I don't think I appreciated it enough at the time, but it's kind of crazy looking back on it.
Yeah. So Milt's obviously been a guest on this series that we've been doing, and so I texted him beforehand, to say like, hey, any good stories or questions to pull from Bonsey, and he said, oh man, keeping it in the Pat Henner coaching tree, I love it. I'd ask him what he thinks are the common threads that he, Mike Smith, and me all pulled from Pat that are central to how we coach and operate. And then he's got two more. We'll get to those.
Yeah, I think, and Milt talks about it all the time, but well, I think two things. The importance of recruiting. Like, Milt is, as someone that recruits against UNC and loses most recruits and lost every recruit to Stanford, I know how hard he recruits. And if you don't have a talented team, you're just not going to be good. You could be the greatest coach in the world, but if the talent's not there, it doesn't matter. So I think Coach Henner really taught us that, and so that's a big one. But I think, like, and Milt talks about all the time, like long-term development and having people ready to continue to be better when they leave college. Like, you look at the Grants of the world, the people that Milt has coached. They're great in college, but they get even better. And I assume that Ethan and Parker will be the same thing. So he was just like super patient with us and always explained like, hey, if you ran X time in high school off of this, you you can run a little bit more and you should be able to run faster. And was always talking to us about how, like, we're lucky working with college age kids. Like, you should just get better each year just by like physically maturing. So that way you can be super patient with their training. But I think that's probably like the two biggest things that probably Mike, Milt, and myself all have pulled from Pat.
Yeah, then Milt goes on to ask, he goes, also another thread is that he came back to Georgetown in 2012 as an assistant right before I left for Stanford. Ask him if he still thought he'd be at Georgetown 13 years and why he's been so committed to staying.
Probably not, to be honest. It's very funny. I got hired uh like I think like July 1 that year, and July for college coaches, not in the office that much. I think that was like at the beach with his family a bunch that month, and then in August we started working together, and then we were at this event for like incoming freshmen and their parents, and I see our athletic director talking, like kind of pull Milt aside, and I went up to Pat. I was like, "What's going on?" He's like, "Oh, he got the Stanford job," and I'm like, "Oh, okay." And it was literally like at this event, and so yeah, I remember that vividly. We probably had been in the office together like 2 to 3 days, and then he was gone. Um,
Yeah, I mean, he told me just like how hard that was. Like it had to be just like such a hard cut.
Oh, it was
Yeah.
so hard. Like, and that I remember the meeting. Like, it was brutal. I and he's coming off a national championship, so yeah. Obviously, you have to do it in a moment, but there's never. Uh, it's hard because he had built quite crazy relationships with the members of the team. Yeah, I think DC is a nice place to live. Obviously, Georgetown. Um, can get access to really good talent to come here, and um, so I don't know. My mom has a house right outside DC, so I have family in the area too. So uh, yeah, I know it's a good place to work. So yeah, but I definitely number one, I wasn't even thinking 13 years down the road at all. I was kind of thinking like, okay, Coach Henner offered me a job. This will be fun. So, and a bunch of my friends lived in DC at the time, so I was probably thinking, okay, cool, I can be roommates with some of my friends now, and that was probably as deep as that decision got.
Yeah. What's the hardest part about recruiting at Georgetown? Because I think of some of these other, schools in major cities in the Northeast, like Columbia. It's hard. I mean, you got Central Park, but then just like the running isn't like ideal. DC, it is, a city, but I think that you get better running there. So it's not necessarily like that's part of a challenge. What's the hardest part?
Probably not having a track.
Mm.
We have like a community track. It was 320 meters. I think they're gonna make it 350. It's a weird thing that like we put it in initially when it went in my sophomore year, but it's also like DC, like we don't own the land, so it's some weird thing. So it's under construction now, and I try to tell people it doesn't, like, I don't think a track makes you good. It's the people you're around, and you're right. DC has really nice um, running. I mean, before uh, the Oregon Project and Bowerman, probably the most successful U.S. program was the Reebok Enclave in DC.
Hmm.
That with 90% our alums, but with some other good people sprinkled in there as well. But clearly, they were Rich Knobs winning world medals in that group. Guys are making world and Olympic finals. So I think they think I'm lying when I say DC is a nice place to train, and then they come on their visit and they're like, "Oh, I just assumed you were just lying," and I was like, I'm pretty straightforward in the recruiting process. I'm not like a used car salesman or whatever. I'm pretty honest with them. But the track thing, I can tell, especially because the people in the neighborhood like walk their dogs and stuff in there because it's enclosed. So like, I try my best to not take recruits up there, but sometimes it happens, and sometimes I can see their face that like, nah, this isn't for me. But it's whatever. If someone's gonna make a decision on school based off of a track, then whatever. That's you know I can't do anything about that.
So going back a little bit back to, the Pat Henner coaching tree, one thing that I find interesting is that, all right, once you guys, take over your programs respectively, you all find a different way to personalize it for yourself. Like it's not maybe 100% exactly what Pat used to do. So I guess what percentage you might be like maybe the closest, compared to Mike or how Milt operates to, 100% Pat, like what are some of those areas of differences where you do differ in style from Coach Henner? And I guess like the underlying thing too is that the sport just evolves and changes so much, where there's all these new things you have to adapt to, whether it's the spikes, whether it's bicarb, whatever it might be.
Yeah, I think yeah, Mike and Milt are smarter than me, so they've created their own thoughts. I kind of just like still do a lot of the stuff that he did. I think the biggest thing, I did work at Syracuse University for two
Yeah.
years, and kind of got, they won 3 years after I left, but I saw some of the, like Martin Hare or some of those young guys that developed and helped them win a national title. I saw what they were doing when they were young, and that I remember my first couple weeks at Syracuse. So I was just used to one thing. I was like, wow, this is so different, and I didn't really get it at first, but eventually I got it and it clicked. So I think like yeah, probably just doing like a little bit more volume. We were like all pretty low volume at Georgetown, so and obviously the shoes have helped with that. Um, so just having, I learned like just as much from the athletes as probably they learned from me. So when like Robert Brandt transferred in, like that was just completely different. Like we did stuff differently than I had ever done, and similar with seeing how well Tinoda can run off of like crazy low volume. I've learned a lot from him, and um, yeah, and I think probably yeah the only difference probably is just like we do a little bit more volume than like kind of what we did in college, but that's also because the shoes allow you to do that. If we were in like streak LTs or something like that, like we would have been in, they'd probably get hurt. So
So that's also kind of learning from the top end of athletes, the top talent that either comes in or you recruit. And I kind of want to go back to this one quote that I found in 2018, and it's advice that you shared with then sixth year Mike Crozier. There's an article where he said, Coach Bonsey told me to live every day like the elite athlete I wanted to be. Live like you're going to race NCAAs next week, even if you won't qualify for Big East. And that was important to me. I wanted to perform on the track, not just be a good locker room guy, because I stuck with it through all the injuries. And then he makes it to the NCAA championships that year in the 10K. Where did sort of that advice come from? And at the same time, it's like that level of attention and care to maybe not necessarily like the top guys on the team. Like it's an important part of the culture and program that you have.
yeah, I think it came from me being hurt a lot as an athlete. I and that wasn't had anything to do with Coach Aaron's training. I think I was just an injury prone guy. I was super low mileage, but um, I just had to. You can't be good at running if you're not focused and like living, eating well, sleeping a lot, hydrate. I mean, you can be relatively good, but to be as good as like the top level of the NCAA, you just can't do it. So I think a lot of it was me myself being hurt and having to deal with stuff, but then also seeing, I was teammates with Chris Lukezic and Andrew Bumbalo and in college, and like they were incredible, and I saw how they lived their life, like what it took to get to that level. So I think a lot of it was just, what I learned in college, and Croge had surgery and then had to have a second surgery, and I certainly I didn't have surgery or anything like that, but I understood kind of what he was going with, and our Yates Fieldhouse where they cross train is not a fun place. So he logged a lot of hours in there. So I knew how much he had grinded, and I really felt like if he stuck with it, that he eventually could get pretty good.
How do you work with athletes when it comes to just like their own goal setting? Like for him, like there was no like clear picture that like, oh, running at the NCAA championships was going to be like this big goal that was attainable. And even if it's like, top stars like you have nowadays, or just those guys, like where do you begin when you sit down with an athlete and try and plan out like the goals for the year?
I think I'm pretty good at knowing like what's realistic for someone, or like, you did this workout, so I think, roughly you could run to this level. So yeah, just being honest with them, like not every person on our team is going to win an individual national title. It's just not realistic. So just finding something that both myself and the athlete are excited about, some goal, and setting it out there. And I don't know, I think it's really, really important to celebrate like the intermediate steps along the way, because if you're just only thinking about the highest level of the NCAA from when you're a freshman, like yeah, Tinoda did it, but that's very rare. It gets overwhelming. You have to have those goals along the way. Like I remember, I think Abel's sophomore year, you're in like 151 indoors in in the 800. And I was like, that's pretty. He only ran 156 in high school. I was like, good job, man. Like, so kind of celebrating those things along the way, and like I said, setting. Obviously, we have program expectations to be nationally relevant, but just making sure that each person has a goal in mind that they'd get excited about, but also is realistic.
Yeah, so then I guess with an example like Abel, let's look at this outdoor season. Like what are the key things along the way before we get to, the NCAA championships in June that you're hoping he takes away from, these races that are taking place like in Duke and Azusa? Like, what are the little kind of checkpoints that what are the boxes you want to check with those races that will get him ready for the championships? Because I think about like just the how he went into the NCAA indoor championships, and he had that great run at BU. I thought that the win at Big East, like even though he wasn't really challenged all that much, was very underrated in just how he closed that race. That he goes into the national championships without the big spotlight on him, and ends up running and winning the whole entire thing. That it wasn't a total shock, but maybe it wasn't people's first pick for the win in that race. And so it's kind of similar to, I'm looking at the results so far of this season, and it's come outdoor championships, everyone's going to hype up Gary Martin versus Ethan Strand versus Nathan Green, but we're like, this dude just won the indoor championship. So like along the way, what are we accomplishing this outdoor season to get him ready for that ultimate showdown?
Yeah, I think I've been proud of him that he's. This is the first time probably in his running career he is running with expectations.
Yeah.
He's been an underdog the whole time, and yeah, people still talk about other people, and he's been beat this season by Nathan Green and Ethan Strand. But I think he's doing a really good job of managing those expectations, because I think a lot of people could let that get to them a little bit. But the biggest thing is just like train well. He did a really good job. I wasn't sure he ran an 800. Like I just had George Mason like 30 minutes from campus. I was actually down at Florida Relay, so I wasn't there for it, but I thought he did a great job there because we really went into like he just kind of did threshold before that, so we really hadn't done anything fast. I wasn't exactly sure how he'd run in an 800. So yeah, he's looked good. I think get his tactics indoors were really really good in that race, and a couple times this season, both at Brian Clay and at Duke, he went a little too early and kind of strayed away from like what had been working for him. Because similar, you're talking about that Big East race, he was just so patient, and then when he really launched, he looked like incredible the last 150. So, and it obviously you saw at Penn Relays on the 4x8, he waited a really really long time. So I think if he can be patient and improve his tactics a little bit, that'll probably be the biggest thing we're looking for. But overall, I mean, you're losing to two of the best guys. Like whatever, he barely lost to two guys who are incredible. So I've been very happy with him so far.
What was your first like, oh damn, this guy's really good moment with him, like in practice or after a race over the last couple of years?
The first time I thought he was so his. I think it was his sophomore year. I can't. The years blend together, but there was a time he made the final at the regional meet his sophomore year, and he was like two places off of making it outdoors, and no one, but he was like one of the last guys to make regionals. And at that moment, I was like, wow, he's actually like really good. And then we had a guy, Matt Piamps, who was a 337 guy for us, and he was doing a 1,000-meter time trial at the end of his season, and Abel was actually about to take a break, and he was just waiting to fly back home to Fresno. And I was like, hey, can you pace Matt? He's like, yeah. And he paced like the most even 150 flat 800 I would ever seen. And I'm pretty sure it was his sophomore year. And I was like, dude, I think you could have beat Matt in that rate. Like, you looked so good. And I know 150 is not that fast, but to do it from the front and evenly is like not easy. So those I remember telling him, like, after that, I was like, you belong in the NCAA final next year. And he didn't quite get there. It took him another year after that, but yeah, I think starting his sophomore year, I could tell he was pretty special.
And then with Tinoda, is it just easier because like he came in just with so much shine as this top high school recruit?
It's easier and harder because he has like a big spotlight on him. So every time he lines up, people expect him to run really fast, and honestly, he almost has every single time he's run in college. He was more so he played soccer in high school, didn't run cross country. So his just like, and he kind of did more sprint based training in high school, which is crazy that he ran 3:58 off of like, I saw some of the stuff he was doing. Some of the workouts were hard, but like there was no volume, there was no threshold, there was nothing like that. Um, the only, I didn't even realize it in the moment, but he like, we would do threshold every Tuesday and he looked good doing it, but he was in his mind, because he had never done it before, he was like, what is this? Like, I don't think his, like, the fall of his freshman year, I'm not sure he, like, fully believed, like, what was happening. And then he broke the collegiate record in the K, his first race, and was like, oh, okay, like, this actually works. Um, so, yeah, I mean, he's easy in the sense that, like, he only runs 5 days a week. His volume is very low, and he's able to run this incredible stuff. So, yeah, I think I've done a good job with him, but I'm just lucky I should thank his parents because he got crazy talent. So
I guess like one thing with Tinoda, obviously have been like the shortcomings come like the championship, indoors or outdoors, and so I guess I'm curious. It's like how do you then when things don't go as well as he had hoped or if you hoped, what's the conversation like after that to keep spirits high, but then just kind of reassess from mistakes and move forward.
yeah, I think so. His freshman year, uh, he comes in. He didn't even get good in high school. I mean, he ran 149 the summer before his like he ran it like July of like going into his senior year, but not as many people knew who he was. It really wasn't until like March of his senior year that people were like, "Wow,
Hmm.
it's good." So he hadn't had the spotlight on him for very long, and then he comes to college and he sets that collegiate record. I think indoors he put too much pressure on himself, and tactically did not run like the way that he had been, and I think he let the moment get to him a little bit, and he
And he's a freshman, I guess. Is
yeah,
like the
yeah. I mean, how many people knock it out of the park
yeah.
their first time? It's just different, and it's also at the New Balance track. He has a New Balance NIL. He's got like all these people there. His sister goes to college in Boston. So there was a lot going on there. He actually got really sick outdoors last year. So honestly, him, uh, even running 146 at the regional meet, he ran 151 at Big East, and then 2 weeks later ran 146, and then we went to this meet at Penn, and he runs 145.1 right after. So I think it wasn't until the Olympic trials when he made the final that we were like, okay, dude, you're not a choker. Like you, that's a pretty high pressure situation that you just went out and ran that well. So, um, and then yeah, but he didn't have the best race indoors, but I think he learned a lot from the indoor meet, and I expect him to be a different guy. But it just he's still young. He's still like he ran in high school, but he kind of just did like I don't know. It wasn't a kid who like had a ton of guidance until really the end of his senior year. He started working with a really good coach, but it just takes a little time.
Is that stressful as in your part of the job as the coach of just sort of like, all right, now I gotta. Not everyone can do the same exact workouts, and like this guy is definitely talented, and just striking that balance. Like I'm sure it's it isn't something that like you forethought in the recruiting process, but it's a challenge every day.
Yeah, I definitely feel the pressure. I believe he has really high end world class talent, and it's my job to get him to, as long as I'm coaching him, to like get to as high as a level as possible because he can have a real career in this sport, and I like my career's in his hands. So yeah, it's pressure, but there I'm not going to recruit high end people like that if I'm not like excited about really doing that.
So one fun component of just sort of that I've picked up on from all of these coaches that I've been speaking to is just how much does winning, the talk about winning, come up, in practice or throughout the course of the season, maybe preseason, and you can go. I think we've come up with a spectrum where it's like the Mike Smith side of things, where it's just sort of you don't talk about winning and the outcome whatsoever. You focus on the process. And then there's Dave Smith on the other side, who is just like, no, it's okay to talk about winning. We do this, we do it often, and we're vocal about it. And you kind of have to just be okay with it. Where do you fall kind of among both of those sides of things?
Probably in the middle. I think it would be naive of me to like head into that indoor meet and think that Tinoda and Abel weren't thinking about winning, because they were. But really, I think with each of them, I had one conversation, and I just said, "Hey, you can win, so let's like address that. But you aren't going to win by thinking about winning. You're going to win by focusing on executing a good race." So literally, we just had one conversation. I just told them, "I think you can win." I did the same thing with Parker Stokes when he won the steeplechase, or even when he came in third his junior year, or yeah, his junior year. He lost by like 0.18 or something like that. But they think they're hold themselves to high standards, and they know how good they are, and they knew they were ready, so they're thinking they're going to win, or at least that they have a shot to win. So I wanted to let them know that I believed in them and that it's possible. But if that's all you're thinking about, then that it's not probably going to be productive.
That's good advice. When you sit down with them at NCAAs, is it both individual, or like are both guys sitting down at the same time with you?
This year at NCAA's, so usually our race day they do a shakeout, and then I take them to Jersey Mike's. Like there's usually a Jersey Mike's in like I like things to be very consistent. Like they can predict what practices like 99% of the time. I'm like a very consistent person, and I like to keep things as simple and consistent as we can. And this specific Jersey Mike's, they got a bunch of mobile orders, so the line was just like not we stood in. Thankfully they got to sit. We were in this Jersey Mike's forever, so I kind of just met with them both right there in line at Jersey Mike's. We were there for honestly like 50 minutes. Abel was getting pissed. So that one, usually it wouldn't be both of them in a meeting like that. It would be one-on-one, but it just happened to be there and surrounded by a bunch of people in line trying to get a sandwich.
Is that how traditions then just get established? It's like, all right, now we got to find a Jersey Mike's in Eugene and run it back.
There is. We went to at the trials. Tinoda, Tim McInerney and I. Tim made the 800 as well. We went to that Jersey Mike's every single day, and the employees like knew their orders, and they were like cheering for him. Like they found out he made the final, and they thought it was cool. So.
Yeah, if they're coming back the next day, it's a good sign.
Yeah, exactly. I think it started like during COVID, like Georgetown wasn't allowing people to like go into restaurants, so I'd like order all their food for them and stuff. And I think it kind of started that was like an easy place to like, you want kind of something kind of simple on race day. And then we ran well at NCAA's that year with Robert Brandt, Jack Salisbury, and Parker Stokes. So I get a little bit superstitious, and I'm like, all right, this works. This is what we're doing now.
I love that. All right, we're going to move into our overrated, underrated segment. So I'm going to run through a variety of elements of training, and each coach has kind of given me their gut check on whether they believe it's overrated, underrated, and a little bit of an explanation. So you can use properly rated every now and then, but for the most part, we'll go with one side or the other. But all right, we'll start off with Alter G, overrated, underrated.
If you're healthy, overrated. When you're hurt, it's really good. But we do have an Alter G. Our guys don't use it that much.
I guess then this is one that piggybacks off of that. Cross training while healthy, overrated, underrated.
I don't have our guys do it, so I would say overrated. But I know it obviously worked really well for Parker Valby. I see it seems like Hawker and Tier do a bunch. But I don't do it. So I guess I would say overrated, but it certainly can work for other people.
Double threshold.
Underrated. We switched to it this year. It's awesome. The guys love it. So yeah, I like a bunch of the older guys were like, why did you not do this earlier? Because we would do these like long 10-mile tempo runs, and I think it just beat them up. They did some impressive stuff, but I think they just came out of it too tired and beat up, and it's just like super under control training, and you don't come out of it beat up. So yeah, I know it's probably ridiculous to say underrated because it's like the fad, but I love it.
Yeah, I guess like on your side of things, what, why did it take so long to implement it? And then was it a quick just, okay, yeah, we're doing it?
Um, I think it took so long because, similar to Coach Hunter, I just don't want to get anyone hurt. I was worried about getting people hurt. And then, we're a hard academic school. I wasn't entirely sure how it would fit into their academic schedules. I started doing it with most of the older guys. Like over the summer, they only work out once they start working out, they only work out once a week. So I just started doing it with them over the summer. And then I remember even the first one we did in DC, when they were back, it was really hot. So we went in the morning, and then we did our afternoon session on our like little crappy indoor track because it was so hot. I didn't want them doing it outside. And I could just tell in that they were like, we feel better this afternoon, and they really liked the workout. And I was like, all right, I could just tell in that moment. I was like, we're just going to keep doing this.
Blood lactate testing.
We don't do it. So I guess I'd say overrated. Villanova's our rival, and I know they do it, so I have to say overrated.
Super shoes.
Underrated. They keep you healthy. I am annoyed by, like, obviously I didn't have super shoes, but I am annoyed by people that just say, "Oh, it's just that." Like they're old people. That annoys me. When you can't. I mean, there's been new shoe technology. Like, look at what Roger Bannister ran in for. That's just part of everything, every sport. But yeah, we those guys put a lot of mileage on their Vaporflies every week.
Yeah, is it mostly for workouts, long tempos? Like, when do they get to super shoes it up?
Every workout we do.
Oh, okay.
So yeah, on Tuesday we do threshold, so they'll be in their Vaporflies or Alpaflies for that. And then oftentimes we even double like our Friday workout as well, but their afternoon session might be a little bit more like race specific, but they'd be in a track super shoe. So, but the rest of the days they're in trainers.
Soft surfaces. You get some of that in DC.
Yeah, we got the toe path. I think underrated. Me as an athlete, like I got hurt so much. I hated pavement. I did like anything to be on a soft surface. Like I would, especially being home in Maine, I would like ride my bike to like 4 miles to a place to run. Or I remember one time, or many times, just running like around this like little field. It was boring, but yeah, I'd say underrated.
Pacing lights.
Overrated because they don't like. Half the time, I feel like they're set to the wrong pace.
Yeah, or it's not communicated to the athletes like what pace they're set to.
That happened at. We had a guy, Berhanu Harriman, run 10K at Raleigh Relays. He ran 28:19, and the lights were supposed to be set. They said 28:30, and then a coach went in and was like, "I want 28:10," but they didn't tell anyone. But then the lights were actually set for 28:45. So the whole like no one, and then they switched halfway through. So I don't know. We just like they don't have them at BU, or they did. I know they had them at one of the races, but people have been running pretty fast without them. I think it's cool technology. Maybe if we had like really benefited from it, I would have a different take. But
BU's track.
That one I will say this is my one properly rated.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, we went up there 4 times this winter, so yeah, I'm gonna, especially to justify the money we spend to go to Boston. I'll say properly rated.
Yeah. Although, do you feel like the meets should be run differently? Where, like, I don't know, like from there's some coaches who like are okay with spending the whole entire day there, but then I'm also just like, why can't we just do 2 hours of like a really good meet where it's like all of the best races in one instead of going event by event by event? So in that sense, all right, the experience at BU.
I think with John Moles being there now, they at least put the heat sheets out ahead of time. You used to just stand there in the middle. You didn't know what heat anyone was in. It was kind of madness. So that part has been good. I do not like being at the track at 9:30 a.m. for the 800 and then the 5Ks at 10 p.m. I leave those Boston meets just like exhausted. I think also for spectators, I think if you had this clean window of like 2 hours where it's just like high level, and obviously people in Boston love track and are knowledgeable running fans. I think that would be really cool. But I don't want to tell the VU staff how to do
Yeah.
their job, but if they could do that, that would be awesome. Like
At
we
least
go,
for one of them. Yeah.
yeah, yeah. Like we go to I think one of the best products on TV is like the final day of NCAA's indoors and outdoors because it's just like clean. It's like 90 minutes or 2 hours, and it's just high level stuff going on. So, yeah, I think that would be cool at BU, but you know, I
Yeah.
they're the ones that have been. I've never put on a meet. We don't even have a track, so I don't even know.
Next one up is bicarb, and I know Tinoda's got his NIL.
Yeah, I think underrated. We certainly have our guys use it, and there's one of the employees from Morton actually lives in DC. She was going to come speak to the team, but we right around late January, like our whole team was sick, and I didn't want them all in the same room together. So I need to bring her in and talk more about the Morton products with the team. But yeah, we use it. I think it works.
Yeah, what was kind of like your learning curve with that? Because it feels like every athlete is also different when it comes to the best practice for it.
I read that article that Jonathan Galt wrote. That's kind of when I first heard about it. Our guys may have known about it ahead of time, but I didn't. And yeah, I think I started kind of experimenting with it. I bought some this year, so I've been obviously Tinoda gets it, which is nice, and some of the guys have bought their own, but I do provide it a little bit. Yeah, it's been interesting with like the longer stuff. Like I know that the science is still we're not sure. Like I had a guy use it for a 5K. He felt like it like dehydrated him or something like that, which really isn't going to impact you in a 15 or an 8. So I certainly think for the middle distance stuff, it helps a lot. I usually try to have them use it in a workout once before they race so that they learn about it. But yeah, I mean, I think it's only a 3.5 minute race or a minute 40 something second race. They can deal with it, and it's worth it if they're a little uncomfortable afterwards.
Weightlifting.
Underrated, yeah. That was a huge. Coach Henner is massive on weightlifting. I think sometimes like too much. Like he would challenge us to like push up challenge or pull up challenges in the weight room. He's a big rock climber, so he'd like do a lot of pull ups. But
Oh, this makes total sense why he's having a field day and probably working so well with Hobbs now.
yeah, I think that's how they met. But yeah, I think it's super important. Obviously, we're not in there. We have a really good strength and conditioning coach right now. Not everyone that we've had has understood distance running, and that, like, I've walked recruits through our weight room when like the lacrosse team or the football team is lifting, and the atmosphere is a lot different. Our guys are like, it's calmer, and but I think it's helps people stay healthy. It helps with their explosiveness, their leg speed, improves their form. So I think it's underrated.
All right, I think we got three more. Altitude.
Underrated, yeah. I wish DC was at altitude. Better. But yeah, our guys, Abel and Tinoda are actually between. They have to qualify for NCAA's first, but assuming they do, between that and USA's because it's late, they're going to go to Park City. Tinoda's never been to altitude, but Abel has. So usually our team will. I think most of our guys are going to Boulder this summer. So yeah, I encourage them to do. I know like not everyone can afford to go or whatever, or but anyone that can make it work, I like to have them go over the summer.
Strides.
Very underrated. Yeah, that was another big thing. That's a 40s, 80s, 120s. That was Coach Henner's thing, and I've stuck with that. Or even as we get uh, further along in the year, like some pretty fast flying 40s. So we did them twice a week in school. I just have them do it once a week, but every Thursday, literally throughout the whole year, even in cross country, guys are doing, sets of 40s, 80s, and 120s in their spikes. So I think it's important to kind of like stay in touch with fast work, even when you're in a base phase, so you're never like that far away from it. And it's just you're probably not going to get hurt running those short distances, and you're getting a benefit from it.
Last one, jogging rest.
Overrated. I don't really care. We have a grad transfer right now, James Dunn, just turned 335. He likes to do jogging rest. That's fine. If guys want to do it, but most of our guys just stand there, try to get their heart rate lower, leading into the rep.
Yeah. Is there any other element of training that jumps out to you that you're like, all right, yeah, that's overrated?
I changed a lot this year. I think like really hard race specific workouts are overrated. Um, I've just found if you just get aerobically stronger and improve your leg speed, like that'll meet in the middle. Um, like like I said, I learned a lot uh, from the guys in this winter specifically. DC actually had a pretty bad winter weather-wise, and our outdoor track was just covered in when we still had it before construction. It was covered in snow and ice. So we were doing like our threshold work on Tuesday on a bike path, and then the race-specific stuff that we were doing was on our indoor track, but it's a flat 200 with pretty tight turns, and Abel's hip was getting super aggravated every time he did it, so we just kind of stopped. He was doing most of his workouts just on a bike path. He came to Penn State one time and didn't race and did like one hard workout, but I look back in the winter, he probably did one hard like mile session. Um, so I think if you're just in good aerobic shape but you're also working on your speed through the strides, that you don't need to do a lot at like race work. And I think Tinoda does a little bit more, but he's so low volume that he kind of needs to. If he could run, well, he probably could run more, but if he did run more, we'd probably do less. And probably the 800 is a little different that you need to do more. But even then, he mostly just does like 200s. I don't know that he's done any reps like fast over like 200, maybe 300 meters.
That's fascinating. I feel like you guys will go into the NCAA championships with the story arc. Like if ESPN picks it up, it's like these guys are working so hard, without a track, and like just build that whole side of things up. When's the track done? And like you guys will have it.
Who knows? They're putting lights in, so that's been part of it. So that part I think they put in, but they haven't even touched the track yet, which is annoying because we could use it, but it's locked up. So I'm expecting. I mean, you're dealing with like DC permits, and there's a lot of inefficiency there. So I don't know. I've become there. There's even annoyingly, there's a bunch of construction down right at the bike path where we start. So I've become friends with some of the construction workers down there. Just as I just like wait for them to run 1,000 meters out and then come back. So it's fun. They honestly kind of liked the change for a little while. But it's probably getting old now. But that's all right. We're getting closer to where they won't have to do it till the fall.
That's right. And the success is just, still coming. So, Coach, I appreciate you taking the time for this. Best of luck at the Big East Championships this weekend and the rest of the outdoor championship season. I mean, you've got some really talented guys, and, hopefully the season goes through September, hopefully, with even some of these guys.
Yeah, I got to renew my passport, maybe, if one of them gets me lucky. So, but yeah, I appreciate that. Appreciate all you covering the sport and seeing Grand Slam stuff. It's been cool.
I appreciate it.
So I appreciate it.